I believed that I couldn't change, and that's where I kind of found myself stuck. So I don't know if you've ever felt stuck because you want to get outside of your lane, you don't really know how, so you just stay where you're at, and you're comfortable. You're not doing bad, but you're not doing as well as you could be. So that's where I was. So I want to ask you a question to ask yourself: how many times in your life has someone said something that shook your confidence, that made you question what you were going to do? How many times have you kind of just faltered from where you're supposed to go because, things are good enough? So I believe that creativity really starts with understanding that you're an individual who has something to contribute and offer. You're not a problem to be solved. You're not a goal to be achieved. You're a person. You're a person whose opinions, ideas, and methods might be very different than someone else's. And sometimes you might struggle to understand that those differences can be your strengths. And I know for me, everybody probably has been in that position where they're like, I just want to fit in. I just want to do what's expected, collect my check or whatever, and go home. And it's a comfortable place to be, but for me, it just wasn't giving life. Like, it wasn't bringing me joy anymore. And I felt like things that I used to enjoy were starting to become things that I didn't enjoy because of the way I was thinking. And so just ask yourself, has someone ever said something that made you think oh, I used to be really good at that, but, I don't know if I am anymore, or I'm just not that, I can't change. I can't do anything different, So I want to encourage you to lean into the discomfort and lean into what makes you you, what makes you original, what makes you unique. Celebrate the fact that you're the one and only you. I don't want to kind of just make this podcast, just me kind of talking, and then you just leave and you're like, oh yeah, that was really good to think about. I actually want to give you things you can practically do to actually do what it is I'm saying you should do. So to start, if you're like, hey, I really don't see myself as creative, or I kind of feel like I've lost who I used to be, how can I get back to kind of reawakening that creative side of myself? Here are some ideas I think that would really help you to do that. So I'm going to read this little list here. The first one I have is ask people what they notice about you. Write it down and keep a running list. The first time I asked somebody, hey, could you give me feedback on what it is you think I'm good at? It really was, it really warmed my heart and made me smile, because if you're asking somebody who cares about you, they're going to give you good feedback. And even if they have, suggestions on how to improve, they're going to do it with love, And so feedback is one of the best ways to kind of reintroduce yourself to you. Ask people what they think. See what it is they like about you, and write it down and look at it, because sometimes we just forget. And I know for me, I need to write things down to remember why it is that I do what I do. Second, journal your joy. Journal your joy. When you love doing something, maybe it's decorating your house or planning a party, pay attention and then journal it. Write it down. You'll notice that I say write a lot because that has been a big help for me. But write down what you enjoy, what encourages you. What do you like to do? Don't worry about it being productive or impressive. What do you enjoy? Sometimes that's a good indicator of the area that you might want to grow if you're trying to reintroduce creativity in your life. Revisit your childhood. I did this recently, and this was really fun, but I looked back at things that I used to do as a kid, and revisiting my childhood was funny because, sometimes you cringe a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I forgot that I really liked this. I forgot that I used to just love Vogue fashion ads. I have always had, I've loved lighting since forever. So I used to really look at that. I used to love music. I just like dancing and listening to it. And so it just kind of can almost loosen up that old muscle if you open up your mind and start going back. You might bring back memories, and you'd be surprised how just rehearsing those things will free you up now as an adult to re-engage the creative part of yourself. Finally, I want you to play. Like, play. Seriously. Having a 1-year-old and just getting on the floor with her sometimes and being silly has really, I don't know, life can get hard and really heavy. And sometimes you just need to laugh and like loosen up a bit to get your mind back to the idea of impossibilities, right? So here's the thing about being a human. This might be confusing, but see if you can follow me. In order for us to achieve goals, we kind of have to see them. Maybe not visually in our head, but even just the thought. We have to think about it before we do it. So, before you go to do your job, right, you have to have an idea of how your morning goes. You get up and you have your routine. So I believe that applies with creativity. We have to be able to see the possibilities and dream, and that's really hard to do if you've come to a place in your life, maybe because of disappointments or because of responsibilities, where you're like, I'm not even going to think of trying to do that because it's just impossible right now. So if you can't see it in your mind, you're not going to be able to create it in your real life. So I think play, which is just uninhibited exploration, right, is going to help you to start believing again and to start dreaming again. And so if you want to get back into being creative and to pulling out what makes you original, start playing. For me, I like to sometimes mess around with web design and just play with ideas that I might have. You can try drawing or coloring. You can try movement. Some people are more into movement. You can take things that are conventional and turn them upside down. Now, don't do this at Thanksgiving, but like mess around with a recipe. Do something you don't normally do to tell your brain, hey, like you have permission to think differently. You have permission to step outside the lines. So that's what I would say. Like, give your brain permission to play. Like, hey, we're just here to create. This isn't about accomplishing. This isn't about perfection. Nobody has to see it. It's just about freeing your brain up. So I think if you do those 4 things, I'm going to read it off. Let's see. So ask people what they notice you do well. Journal your joy. Revisit your childhood and play. I think you're going to find creativity starting to come back into your life more. And if life is hard, you'd be surprised how a little creativity can just bring you joy because, I believe that we're created to be creative. And one of the most powerful things you have is your mind. One of the most powerful things you have is your ability to think. I'm going to leave you with that. Give yourself permission to enjoy the journey that you're in right now. And hopefully this week you'll take some time to be creative, however it is you want to do that. So that's it for today. This was my first episode. Woo! And I'll be here every other Friday talking about how we can use creative thinking to improve our lives. You can find me at Bethany J Photography on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube if you want to watch this podcast instead of listen. You can also find me on all streaming platforms as well as BethanyJphotography.com. Oh, and there's Sinai now, so I gotta go. All right, bye.